Good morning. This is Ken Blaylock with SDG Bible Study. That's the Soli Deo Gloria Bible Study coming to you on this Saturday morning, June the 27th, 2026. I hope everyone is doing well, ready for the weekend, and ready for the reading of God's Word this morning as we continue reading from the reading plan as it happened, a one-year chronological walk through the Bible, and also reading from Daily Doctrine, a one-year guide to Systematic Theology. This morning we'll be in the book of 1 Kings, chapters 20 and 21. So join me as we read God's Word together. 1 Kings, chapter 20. Now Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, gathered all his military force, and there were 32 kings with him, and horses and chariots. And he went up and besieged Samaria and fought against it. Then he sent messengers to the city to Ahab, king of Israel, and said to him, Thus says Ben-Hadad, Your silver and your gold are mine, your most beautiful wives and children are also mine. Then the king of Israel answered and said, It is according to your word, my lord, O king, I am yours, and all that I have. Then the messengers returned and said, Thus says Ben-Hadad, Surely I sent to you, saying, You shall give me your silver and your gold, and your wives and your children. But about this time tomorrow I will send my servants to you, and they will search your house and the houses of your servants, and whatever is desirable in your eyes they will put in their hand and carry away. Then the king of Israel called all the elders of the land and said, Please know and see how this man is looking for trouble, for he sent to me for my wives and my children and my silver and my gold, and I withheld nothing from him. And all the elders and all the people said to him, Do not listen or consent. So he said to the messengers of Ben-Hadad, Say to my lord the king, all that you sent for to your servant at the first I will do, but this thing I cannot do. And the messengers departed and brought him word again. Then Ben-Hadad sent to him and said, May the gods do so to me, and more also, if the dust of Samaria will be sufficient for a handful for all the people who follow me. Then the king of Israel answered and said, Speak to him. Let not him who girds on his armor boast like him who takes it off. Now it happened that when Ben-Hadad heard this message, as he was drinking with the kings in the booths, he said to his servants, Station yourselves. So they stationed themselves against the city. Now behold, a prophet approached Ahab, king of Israel, and said, Thus says Yahweh, Have you seen all this great multitude? Behold, I will deliver them into your hand today, and you shall know that I am Yahweh. And Ahab said, By whom? So he said, Thus says Yahweh, by the young men of the rulers of the provinces. Then he said, Who shall begin the battle? And he said, You. Then he mustered the young men of the rulers of the provinces, and there were 232. And after them he mustered all the people, even all the sons of Israel, 7,000. They went out at noon, while Ben-Hadad was drinking himself drunk in the booths with the 32 kings who helped him. And the young men of the rulers of the provinces went out first, and Ben-Hadad sent out, and they told him, saying, Men have come out from Samaria. Then he said, If they have come out for peace, take them alive, or if they have come out for war, take them alive. So these went out from the city, the young men of the rulers of the provinces and the military force which followed them. And they each struck his man, and the Arameans fled, and Israel pursued them. And Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, escaped on a horse with horsemen. And the king of Israel went out and struck down the horses and chariots, and struck the Arameans with a great slaughter. Then the prophet came near to the king of Israel and said to him, Go strengthen yourself and know and see what you have to do. For at the turn of the year, the king of Aram will come up against you. Now the servants of the king of Aram said to him, Their gods are gods of the mountains. Therefore they were stronger than we. But rather let us fight against them in the plain, and surely we will be stronger than they. Do this thing. Remove the kings, each from his place, and put captains in their place. And you shall number a military force like the military force that you have lost, horse for horse, and chariot for chariot. Then we fight against them in the plain, and surely we will be stronger than they. And he listened to their voice and did so. Now it happened at the turn of the year that Ben-Hadad mustered the Arameans and went up to Aphek to fight against Israel. Now the sons of Israel were mustered and were provided for and went to meet them, and the sons of Israel camped before them like two little flocks of goats. But the Arameans filled the land. Then a man of God came near and spoke to the king of Israel and said, Thus says Yahweh, because the Arameans have said Yahweh is a God of the mountains, but he is not a God of the valleys. Therefore I will give all this great multitude into your hand, and you shall know that I am Yahweh. So they camped one opposite the other 7 days. Now it happened that on the seventh day the battle was joined, and the sons of Israel struck down of the Arameans 100,000 foot shoulders in one day. But the rest fled to Aphek into the city, and the wall fell on 27,000 men who were left. And Ben-Hadad fled and came into the city into an inner chamber. Then his servants said to him, Behold, now we have heard that the kings of the house of Israel are kings of loving kindness. Please let us put sackcloth on our loins and ropes on our and go out to the king of Israel. Perhaps he will preserve your life. So they girded sackcloth on their loins and put ropes on their heads and came to the king of Israel and said, Your servant Ben-Hadad says, Please let me live. He said, Is he still alive? He is my brother. Now the men interpreted this as an omen, and hastily catching his words said, Your brother Ben-Hadad. And he said, Go, bring him. Then Ben-Hadad came out to him, and he took him up into the chariot. And Ben-Hadad said to him, The cities which my father took from your father I will return, and you shall make streets for yourself in Damascus, as my father made in Samaria. Ahab said, And I will let you go with this covenant. So he cut a covenant with him and let him go. Now a certain man of the sons of the prophets said to another by the word of Yahweh, Please strike me. But the man refused to strike him. Then he said to him, Because you have not listened to the voice of Yahweh, behold, as soon as you walk away from me, a lion will strike you down. And as soon as he had walked away from him, a lion found him and struck him down. Then he found another man and said, Please strike me. And the man struck him, wounding him. So the prophet walked away and stood by for the king by the way, and disguised himself with a bandage over his eyes. Now it happened that as the king was passing by, he cried out to the king and said, Your servant went out into the midst of the battle, and behold, a man turned aside and brought a man to me and said, Guard this man. If for any reason he is missing, then your life shall be for his life, or else you shall pay a talent of silver. Now it happened that while your servant was busy here and there, he was gone. The king of Israel said to him, So shall your judgment be. You yourself have decided it. Then he hastily took the bandage away from his eyes, and the king of Israel recognized him that he was of the prophets. And he said to him, Thus says Yahweh, because you have let go out of your hand the man whom I have devoted to destruction, therefore your life shall go for his life, and your people for his people. So the king of Israel went to his house sullen and enraged, and came to Samaria. 1 Kings chapter 21. Now it happened after these things that Naboth the Jezreelite had a vineyard which was in Jezreel beside the palace of Ahab king of Samaria. And Ahab spoke to Naboth, saying, Give me your vineyard, that I may have it for a vegetable garden, because it is close beside my house. And I will give you a better vineyard than it in its place. If it is good in your sight, I will give you the price of it in money. But Naboth said to Ahab, Yahweh forbid that I should give you the inheritance of my fathers. So Ahab came into his house sullen and enraged because of the word which Naboth the Jezreelite had spoken to him. For he said, I will not give you the inheritance of my fathers. And he lay down on his bed and turned away his face and ate no food. But Jezebel his wife came to him and said to him, How is it that your spirit is so sullen that you are not eating food? So he said to her, Because I spoke to Naboth the Jezreelite, and said to him, Give me your vineyard for money, or else, if it pleases you, I will give you a vineyard in its place. But he said, I will not give you my vineyard. And Jezebel his wife said to him, Do you now exercise kingship over Israel? Arise, eat bread, and let your heart be merry. I will give you the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite. So she wrote letters in Ahab's name and sealed them with his seal, and sent letters to the elders and to the nobles who were living with Naboth in his city, And she wrote in the letter saying, call for a fast and seat Naboth at the head of the table, and seat 2 vile men before him, and let them testify against him, saying, you curse God and the king. Then take him out and stone him so that he will die. So the men of his city, the elders and the nobles who lived in his city, did as Jezebel had sent word to them, just as it was written in the letter which she had sent them. They called for a fast and seated Naboth at the head of the table of the people. Then 2 vile men came in and sat before him, and the vile men testified against him, against Naboth before the people, saying, Naboth cursed God and the king. So they took him outside the city and stoned him with stones, and he died. Then they sent word to Jezebel, saying, Naboth has been stoned and is dead. Now it happened that when Jezebel heard that Naboth had been stoned and was dead, Jezebel said to Ahab, arise, take possession of the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite, which he refused to give you for money, for Naboth is not alive, but dead. Now it happened that when Ahab heard that Naboth was dead, Ahab arose to go down to the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite to take possession of it. Then the word of Yahweh came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, arise, go down to meet Ahab, king of Israel, who is in Samaria. Behold, he is in the vineyard of Naboth, where he has gone down to take possession of it. And you shall speak to him, saying, thus says Yahweh, have you murdered and also taken possession? And you shall speak to him, saying, thus says Yahweh, in the place where the dogs licked up the blood of Naboth, the dogs will lick up your blood, even yours. And Ahab said to Elijah, have you found me, O my enemy? And he answered, I have found you, because you have sold yourself to do what is evil in the sight of Yahweh. Behold, I will bring evil upon you, and I will utterly sweep you away, and will cut off from Ahab every male, both bond and free, in Israel. And I will make your house like the house of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha the son of Ahijah, because of the provocation with which you have provoked me to anger, and because you have made Israel sin. Of Jezebel also has Yahweh spoken, saying, the dogs will eat Jezebel in the district of Jezreel. The one belonging to Ahab who dies in the city, the dogs will eat, and the one who dies in the field, the birds of the sky will eat. Surely there was no one who sold himself to do what is evil in the sight of Yahweh like Ahab, whom Jezebel his wife incited, and he acted very abominably in following idols, according to all that the Amorites had done, whom Yahweh dispossessed before the sons of Israel. Now it happened when Ahab heard these words that he tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and fasted, and he lay in sackcloth and went about despondently. Then the word of Yahweh came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, do you see how Ahab has humbled himself before me? Because he has humbled himself before me, I will not bring the evil in his days, but I will bring the evil upon his house in his son's days. That's going to conclude our reading from the biblical text this morning. Now we'll go on and read from Daily Doctrine. Day 178. Does James contradict Paul? The book of James seems to repudiate the Protestant doctrine of sola fide. How does Romans chapter 3, verse 28, for we hold that one is justified by faith apart from the works of law, square with James chapter 2, verse 24? You see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. This seems like a plain contradiction. Paul thinks we're justified by faith alone. James thinks we're justified by faith and works. No wonder Luther once called James a right strawy epistle. Rightly understood, however, there's no contradiction between Paul and James. Here are 5 reasons why. Number 1, James and Paul are addressing different concerns. The foolish person in James chapter 2, verse 20 is not the Apostle Paul. James was likely written before Paul's letters to the Romans or Galatians. They are dealing with different issues. Paul is asking the question, how are we right with God? James is asking, what does genuine faith look like? For Paul, the issue is, how do Gentiles get into the church? For James, the issue is, why are people not caring for their brothers and sisters in the church? Number 2, James' argument presupposes the importance of faith. The necessity of faith is presumed in verse 17 and in verse 20, and again in the example of Abraham in verses 22 and 24. James does not want faith to be supplanted by works or even supplemented by works. He wants faith to be demonstrated by works. The equation in James is not faith plus works equals justification. The equation is faith minus works does not equal justification. Think of salvation as F, faith, equals J, justification, plus W, works. Paul says, don't you dare put W on the left side of the equation. And James says, don't you dare leave out W on the right side of the equation. Number 3, Paul and James use works in 2 different ways. Paul is talking about works of the law, especially Jewish rites like circumcision, holy days, and food observance. Those were the typical ways for a Jewish audience that one would be tempted to place their confidence in something other than Christ. James is talking about the works of faith, acts of charity operative in the body of Christ without preferential treatment. Number 4, Paul and James use the word justify in 2 different ways. Paul is dealing with people who trust in the works of the law for their standing with God. James is dealing with people who think mere intellectual assent is real Christianity. James chapter 2, verse 19. Paul is talking about a forensic declaration of righteousness. James is talking about practical evidence that faith is real. Chapter 2, verse 16 and 18. And number 5, Paul teaches the same point James teaches. Paul speaks of the obedience of faith, Romans chapter 1, verse 5, and of faith working through love, Galatians chapter 5, verse 6. Paul understands that dead faith is no faith at all, 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 9 through 11, Galatians chapter 5, verses 16 through 26. James is talking about the kind of belief that even demons have. Neither Paul nor James believe that such empty, untrusting belief constitutes justifying faith. In the end, there's no conflict between Paul and James. It is right to say we are justified by faith alone apart from works of the law, provided we understand, as James reminds us, that faith that justifies will always work itself out in love. That's going to conclude our reading from the biblical text and from Daily Doctrine this morning. As we see in the biblical text, we see the Arameans coming against Ahab and Israel, and God showing himself, Yahweh showing himself powerful to show Israel that Yahweh is the one true God. And then we see in Daily Doctrine, we talk about, is there a contradiction between James and Paul about faith and works? I've always likened it like this. Smoke is evidence that there's fire. And if your faith is the flames, there will be smoke. No smoke, no fire. There's no contradiction. We are not saved by our faith. Works do not save us, but they are evidence that we are God's child. We are followers of Christ. We are his elect. It's very simple, really. I hope you understand that this morning. What does your faith look like? God working in and through you. Hope you have a blessed Saturday. I hope you have a great day in the Lord. Give him glory, solely Deo glory.